the one source, Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to episode 402 of Sports Card Nation. As always, glad to be in your audio device, and thank you for giving your time and your attention to this show. Let's we just celebrated our 400th episode a few weeks ago. We did a giveaway. We randomized everyone who entered, and we've picked our winners. So I'm not going to give last names because I don't know if those folks want those last names given, but I'll give first names and announce the winners, if you will. Winning card packages, which are assortment of cards, graded, raw, and whatnot. We have two winners in those categories, Drake and Richard. Winning the Upper Deck wax box, sealed wax box of sports, their sports release. Debbie, congrats to Debbie. Winners of a smaller wax box, I think Topps 206 from 2001, and some cards and a slab guard, Travis. And our two winners of the 1-year memberships to Card Ladder, our great sponsor, Jason and Daryl. So there are your 6 winners by first name only. If they want to publicly announce that they won, I'll leave that up to them. But those are the 6 winners. And thanks to everybody who entered. I wish I could give away something for everybody. Unfortunately, we're limited with what we can give away. But we have 6 winners. So congrats to them. Want to acknowledge our sponsors, SGC, Iron Sports Cards, Sports Collectors Digest, Hobby Hotline, Upper Deck, Card Ladder, and the Certified Trading Card Association. All right, so this is part 2 of our conversation with Iowa Dave Schwartz of the Shallow End and another podcast, and we're going to dive deeper more into like some of the the things you like about podcasting, things you don't, when you know it's time, all that good stuff. So Dave's a great guy. He is still on the podcast airwaves, so by all means, check out his content. And glad to call him a friend. And again, this is part 2 with Dave.
Attention, Sports Card Nation viewers. What up, kids? It's your boy Scott Hansen from NFL Red Zone. Oh, we're back. Ball is back. The hobby never ends. And before you know it, I'm going to be on your screen again, rocking that Octobox, knocking the bottom out of the witching hour, and announcing 7 hours of Red Zone football. But as you watch Red Zone, just save some time. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, to check out John and Sports Card Nation. Let's have a great season, people.
Like I don't do anything with like Pokemon and Magic the Gathering, right? But that's, as you just pointed out, that is a huge part of the hobby. Whether John Newman likes it or not, or Dave Schwartz likes it or not, it's not going away, and it's here to stay, and that's fine. I mean, that's great. I've heard people say, though, it's a good segue to this question. Is I've heard people say like shows should be like all sports or all Pokemon. They should have, much like you say, where like grading should have like one building just grades Pokemon. But like you say, that's sort of, where does that stop? Everyone's going to want their own building, if you will. And even here locally, and I know nationally, like that's an undertone, is like there should be an all Pokemon show only and no sports. And there should be a sports card show only and no Pokemon. And someone asked me, like, what do you think, John, when you hear that stuff? And I just, as someone who doesn't do Pokemon, like, it's not going to hurt my feelings to either set up at a show at a dealer or attend as a customer and have it be all sports cards. I'm just being, transparent there. But I also don't want to be the guy, Jackie Robinson's my idol, right? He broke the as we all know. I don't have to tell the story of Jackie Robinson. So I don't want to, thinking about segmenting the hobby like that is sort of going against sort of what he stands for, like where we can't all like live together and coexist together. We all have to be in separate leagues, if you will. So I sort of wrestle with that. And I guess my answer to my own question for me, Dave, is like, if it's accepted and no one's going to be really that upset about it, then I we have a show here in the Syracuse area that's called PokeFest, and that's all it is trading card games. You won't see sports cards there, so it's not like it's not happening already. And I'm sure if it's happening here in Syracuse, I imagine there are other TCG events. So I'm against anything that sort of makes anyone feel alienated, but I also, as someone who just does sports cards, it wouldn't hurt my, going to just a sports card show. Kind of your feelings with that sort of segmenting the hobby on the show level.
It is kind of the way I diverge from my thoughts on grading. It's a little bit different for the show, and maybe it's the selfishness of how I want to go to a show, what it means. So, I don't mind PSA or Beckett or CGC or TAG grading TCG and sports, because that's what they do for their living, and that's great. But part of me does kind of wish the shows were separated, because they're really different hobbies. You wouldn't have like the golf and knitting expo, right? You wouldn't put those together. Those are separate hobbies. Some people like to knit, some people like to play golf. TCG and sports, I know there are people who collect both, but they're inherently different. And I'm just really bummed when I go to a show and it's 50, 60, 70% Pokemon. And like other people have said, I love that there's a hobby for people who collect it. But this was billed as a sports card show. And instead I do a walkthrough for 15 minutes and leave because there's nothing really relevant. And, this is not my business. I'm not a showrunner, but it strikes me that there might be opportunities to increase revenue by having separate shows, where maybe on Thursday and Saturday it's TCG, and Friday and Sunday it's sports. I don't know how they do it, but do something. Or one weekend is the sports card show, the next weekend is TCG. Why not? Because while there are people who cross over, especially younger people who cross over between the two, and it's convenient for them to be at a show where there's both, it makes it harder to enjoy. No, enjoy is the wrong word. It makes it harder to navigate the experience on the smaller show end. The National is not a problem. It's almost all sports. But on the smaller type shows, the more regional ones, it makes it harder to navigate to and less worthwhile to go when you've got to drive an hour or 3 hours to get somewhere, and it's only 1/3 of what you're actually looking for. I almost feel like it's like misled in a way, or it's like some sort of a bait and switch. Like, you got my $10 to walk in here, but I just should have gone and gotten a Big Mac with that instead, because at least then I would have gotten something out of it. So yeah, I'm for somehow separating the hobbies at the show level. I just don't know how to do that.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say it like that, because I was doing a show, and I won't mention it. If someone wanted to do the research, they follow me to play detective and figure it out. I was doing a show about an hour north of Syracuse here as a dealer. And when I first started doing the show like 3 years ago, it was heavy sports card, vintage, modern, ultra modern. And then it started to change over to Pokemon. And so I was doing very well. And not that it's about dollar signs only, right? But when you're traveling an hour to and from a show as a dealer and unpack, bringing everything in, bringing everything out, what slowly happened with that show, Dave, is much like you said, it gradually became more of a Pokemon show. And I sort of became like the dinosaur just hanging on. And not just me. I don't want to make it like it's all about me. But it became almost like 60% Pokemon, maybe even 70%, and then 20-30%, sports cards. And because of that, people who collect a sports card, and it makes sense, right? I don't blame, much like you said, people who collect a sports card would come there and there's 60 tables, but only 20 of them are or less are sports cards. And at first, I think it actually helped, because there was less competition because I had sport. But then those people stopped coming, right? Much like you said, because they were paying $5 to get in, and in 15, 20 minutes they saw all the sports card table, and maybe they bought something, maybe they didn't, but they saw everything and they were done. And like we have a show here in Syracuse that's a much bigger show, 120 tables. That's so a lot of them were just say, hey, I'll just wait for that one. And so a lot of that traffic, at least on the sports card side of the house, started to drop off. And so, and I obviously for sales tax, I track all my sales and stuff. And I slowly saw that show for me dwindle down. And I'm like, I don't really want to drive an hour there back, do all the grind that you do as a dealer, unpacking, unloading, and all that. I'm like, it's not even making a lot of sense for me anymore. So I wound up phasing that show out. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting. This just hit me as you were talking. I remember a couple of years ago, and I did this for sure. I go to a show and I would come back and complain. It's like, oh, it's nothing but modern football quarterbacks and first Bowman Chrome baseball. And then, well, it's not that anymore, right? Now it's Pokemon. I got what I wanted, right? I complained about there not being exactly what I wanted. So maybe that's just part of the hobby, right? It's like we want it to be exactly what we want. I want there to be a show where it's 300 tables of nothing but 1998 through 2011 baseball cards. Because if it's anything before that, it's junk wax. And if it's anything after that, it's ultra modern. And I don't like that. So it is funny. It just struck me about that I was complaining about too many young quarterbacks and too many first Bowman Chrome prospects at shows. And I would kill to have that back now.
Yeah, it's funny how that happens. And here's the thing. It's already happening, Dave, right? We have the Strongsville show in Strongsville, Ohio, which is all vintage. So if you're a vintage guy, and I've never been there, I've been asked to, you got to go, John, you got to go. It's on my, at some point I do have to get to at least once to check it out. And I know it's in a different location and bigger now. So it's not unprecedented, Dave. We do have shows where they sort of focus on one area of the hobby. I guess if it's done sort of the right way, I guess that's the real bottom line, right? And you know what it is going in. There's no sort of, you don't feel like duped, right? Anyone that's going to Strongsville know what show they're going to. No one's walking into Strongsville and saying, where's all the Wemby cards? You know what I mean? So, and I don't mean this in a mean way, but if that happens, someone just didn't do their research prior to attending the show.
Right. That's their own fault.
To be frank, right? So I guess if it's done sort of above board in the right way, I guess I'm good with that. I just don't want to I don't want anyone to feel like alienated or excluded where it's not sort of known up, you know what I mean? As long as it's done, everyone knows what this show is or what that show. I'm all for it. And I don't think there's anything, if it's done like that, I think that's the way to do it. There's no misconceptions. Everyone knows what the show entails. And just like the PokeFest I talked about here in Syracuse, which is at the same location, the New York State Fairgrounds, as the Collectors Fest, which is sports cards. So one's a sports card show, one's a Pokemon and trading card games. And, I did set up, the promoter asked me to set up one day there with, doing the SGC bulk subs. And it was interesting. I enjoyed watching the people because they're coming in like cosplay outfits. Some of them were really good. And I actually was set up across from, at that particular show, from Sergeant Slaughter. And he was fun to watch interact with people. And so, at one point he stared me down, which I thought on a quiet moment in the show, he kind of just mean mugged me and then smiled. So I thought that was pretty funny. But I guess as long as it's done sort of, where there's no misperceptions, no one's being sold one bill of goods and getting something else. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. As long as everyone has their thing, that's all that's important. As long as things are ethical and people have what makes them happy, that's the most important thing.
Yep. Nope, I agree. All right. So, one thing I wanted to get your take on this. One thing I've noticed, even probably recently, and when I say recently, I'd say probably in the last 3 to 5 years, is, when I started this podcast in 2018, I'm like the old man on the porch, and I didn't have I didn't know how long, like I said earlier, I didn't know how long the show was going to last, I didn't have guests initially. I didn't have sponsorships initially. Even the sponsorship thing was sort of an accident. Someone approached me like, how do I become part of the show? And the rest is history. And even like I just said earlier, right, when someone recognizes me at a show and shakes my hand or pats me on the back and says, I love your show, like that never gets lost on me, right? Like, I'm doing this because I collect cards and I'm passionate about card collecting. I started as a 7-year-old kid in 1979. There was no internet and podcast, right? And I feel like, and again, I'm not, without mentioning that, like, I think there's some people in this space who kind of do it because they do feel like the celebrity factor, fancy themselves as they've almost made themselves bigger than the cards we try to speak of. Is that something you see, or again, is this something maybe I'm making a mountain out of them? Not necessarily.
To help me think of it, can you just kind of give me an example?
Well, just, sometimes I feel like someone, it's more like, I try not to even show my face a ton, like on any type of promos, or I'm not saying I don't do it. I'm not going to be disingenuous, but I rather show pickups, or a lot of my stuff is like promote. Hey, on this episode, join us. Dave Schwartz is my guest, right? I more or less highlight who the guest is rather than even myself. But I feel like in certain circumstances, right, it's more about the host of the show than even the guest, if there is a guest, or than the cards themselves. I don't know if that clarified it any better, but
yeah, that helps. Thank you. And every industry has its PT Barnums, right? The ones who have the megaphone and yelling, "Come look at the bearded lady," or whatever. But it's their face all over the tent, right? And not their performers. And I just kind of try to block it out for the most part. I think I don't mind that there are people who have their faces out there because for the most part, I recognize them because they put out some really good content, right? And I just happen to know them. Now, when they have this is a pet peeve, but when somebody is advertising their own show during the show, that's when I will start to tune out or turn off, or I'll check back in with this next week. And I don't want to name names, but I'm gonna make a show. The show, let's call the show. I'm looking at this over there, the pretzels. So I'm looking at the thing of pretzels. Hey, welcome back to the Pretzel Show. This is the Pretzel Show. Next week on the Pretzel Show, like we know, I've downloaded this already. I know where this is, but this guy, he just says the name of a show over and over and over. And it's almost like he has a book on branding in front of him, and he's like going through it, right? Saying, okay, this is how I get guests. This is how I build audience. Now I pretend to have interest in them, right? Now I must field questions. Now, and just one after the next. And when it feels disingenuous, that turns off. There are some people who are like take someone who I really content I really love is Chris Sewell, sports card collector, investor, dealer, in that order. But he's been around for decades, but he's really starting to boom now. And now he's got a podcast. He just moved his business into its own building. It's getting larger. His face is everywhere, but he doesn't want it to be, right? His face is everywhere because he's just really good at his job, and he's a really good force for the hobby. And so, yeah, but it has to do with like intent. And when I hear him talk about cards, and he goes on his YouTube channel, says, here's the top 10 most valuable cards from the 1980s, football cards. He's just having fun, and he's just talking to people. He hasn't changed. He's true to who he is. And we know him because he's good, as opposed to knowing somebody because they want to be known. There's a difference.
Yeah, no, I agree. And maybe a better way too that I could have described that to you, like from the start, rather than sort of being sort of vague. I guess if I watch somebody or listen to someone, whether it's audio, video, and I'm really not sure, like, do they collect cards? Are they just almost like a studio? You know what I mean? Like, hey, we're gonna hire. This is a studio analyst that's going to talk about baseball. But they may not even love it. That's just their job. I think there's folks like that where I'm like, I don't even know I'm not even sure if they collect. And maybe I'm sort of being a little, a little too crass there. But like, if you have to like scratch your head and like, do they collect, or are they just a talking head? When when it's that gray area where you don't know for sure, that bothers me a little bit. And I know, like I like to promote the guests and make it more about them than me.
You are listening to the Sports Card Nation podcast. We'll be right back after this break.
If you care about the future of the hobby, it's time to know the name CTCA, the Certified Trading Card Association. CTCA is the first and only nonprofit trade association dedicated to making the trading card hobby safer, smarter, and stronger for everyone. From collectors and local card shops to breakers, grading companies, and hobby businesses. Through initiatives like the Trusted Retailer Program, the Certified Breaker Program, the Healthy Hobby Initiative, and the Global Trading Card Registry, CTCA is helping bring more trust, transparency, accountability, and protection to the hobby we all love. Whether you're a shop owner, breaker, dealer, content creator, or passionate collector, now is the time to help shape the future of the hobby. Become a member today and join the movement at thectca.org. That's thectca.org, because a better hobby starts with all of us. CTCA, building a safer, smarter, and stronger hobby.
We are back.
I do talk a lot about what's going on in the hobby on the corporate level. I'm not going to, you know that, I know that, people in the show know that comes up. But I also try to have, people like yourself. This is a perfect example that are just enjoy collecting cards and following their passion and their teams and their players and the nostalgia of it, right? So I try to balance it. That's why I say you were better at it than me, because you didn't really even have to balance it. That's what you were all about. And I'm, truth be told, I'm more of a sort of 50-50, or at least I feel like I am. Someone might agree or disagree, but that's where I try to be. Some of it comes from some of the other content I do, which like Hobby Hotline, which is sort of topical based, if you will. And it's sort of influence, whether I like it or not, I think it influences even my individual shows, if you will. So, even when I first started the show, it was just me. And then I had a guest on and people said, oh man, we love guests. Like, we like you, but we love even when you have guests on. So that became a full-time thing. And then I got emails and DMs saying, John, we like you. It's nice that you have guests on, but we also liked when you just picked a topic and gave us your opinion. And so that's where Hobby Quick Hits came to be, which was like a year and a half after Sports Card Nation. So I try to cover all the bases as best I can. I know sometimes I'm probably more successful at it than others, truth be told. But again, that's a human element, right? One thing I've always been is myself. Like, no one will ever say I met, real quick story. And this happened, I think, either last year's National or the one before. I talked to someone for 20 minutes that I had never met before. They were a fan of the show. They tapped me on the shoulder. We talked for 20 minutes. And after, as we were winding the conversation down, this gentleman said to me, you're like, meeting you in person, you're just like I hear on the podcast. And I kind of scratched my head and I said, what did you expect? That's me on the pod. This is me here. It's the same guy, since I don't have a mic in front of me. And that's, I guess, where I'm sort of going to is
and I think people can sniff out someone who's disingenuous. You can tell when someone doesn't mean it.
Yeah.
And there are people who have audiences of 1 million people who are real collectors, and there are people who have are just starting out, and you wonder what they're even doing. Like, what are you doing here? He gets a lot of crap, so I'm going to say something positive about him for once. But that Jeff Wilson collects, right? He loves Falcons. He loves his Falcons. He likes the USA team cards. He's got it. Just because he is trying to do what he's doing with his businesses doesn't mean he can't also like it. And at the same time, there's another sort of high roller who I'm not going to name, who just gets on and just complains about everything, right? The titles of his episodes are trying to be provocative and get the clicks. And I stopped listening to him for about a year. One of his headlines caught me, and I listened to it about 2 weeks ago, and I stopped in about 10 minutes again because it wasn't matching what he was saying, and then he was taking in some different direction. So I don't think it matters if you have a following of 2 people or a following of 1 million people. I think audiences are smart, and I think they know when somebody is in. I think they know when somebody is in the hobby because they really enjoy it and maybe want to make money, versus they're here to stir up garbage and to get clicks, which are 2 different things. And I like that we're able to parse that out.
Yeah, no doubt. And even, you mentioned Jeff, and I know him a little bit. Some of that, I think you'll agree with this too. Some of that comes from jealousy, right? When someone's successful, someone who maybe isn't as successful sort of already dislikes them just for that simple fact, like, hey, I wish I was doing that or at that level, right? And I think it comes from that. I think Jeff gets a lot of hate because someone would love to be in that position, and because they're not, they're just going to throw them out. You know what I mean? And so it's a great point, right? And so I get that. And, it's funny because I did a show, I did a hobby quick hits where when I do shows, sometimes I'll do like a card show review, how it went. And the first one I did, Dave, I actually said what I made. And I got like an email from someone that's like, hey, I really didn't appreciate it. I was disappointed. You said you made a couple $1,000, and I'm at the show. When I go to a show, I'm thankful if I have just $100, and it must be nice, and they really, and I didn't say that to make that person feel that way or angry. And so I respond. I say, hey, I apologize. That was not my intent with me giving out a dollar amount. I was just trying to be transparent. I pay sales tax, so it's not like I'm hiding the income, But if I hurt your feelings, I 100% sincerely apologize. And I made a mental note to myself, like if I do a card show review again, just say it was a great show. It was an okay show. It was a good show. It was without giving a dollar amount. I learned like sort of a lesson from that, if you will. And so that's what I do when I don't do those shows that much, but when I do that, I don't give out figures. I just talk about in general, the show was not great, or it was great, or it was okay, or very, almost like, different like grade levels. And I got like a bunch of messages like from people now, like, hey, why didn't you give out how much you made? And so you can't, either way, you can't win. Like someone's not going to be, and even with those, I just explain without going in long-winded. I just tell them, I did that once and someone got their feelings hurt, which was not my intention. So now I'm just not going to do that, because I thought to myself, if that person emailed me, how many people didn't email me that maybe felt a sort of way, right? And so I said, I'm just not going to throw dollar signs on. That's not really what I'm about. Anyway, I mean, it's a part of what my hobby, but it's not all, doesn't define me across the. So now I don't give out dollar figures like that. And it's funny, people be like, how much did you make? And, I'm like, do you work for, and then I explain to them why I don't do it. And then I'll, my humor, I'll throw in there, like, do you work for the IRS? Don't worry. I'm reporting it. You're going to get your cut, and they're like, no, I don't work. I want to know, like, or, one guy told me, hey, I'm a dealer too. I like to know, kind of compare notes. And he even asked me in that email, like behind this, like, hey, will you tell me in the email? You know what I mean? I know you're not saying it on the air. And he asked nice. I said, I don't, you want to know how I did, like, not necessarily a secret, but I'm not going to advertise it anymore, just because you never know how it might rub somebody. Well, and in that case, the wrong way. And it took that email, right, to make me think about it like that. And so now I just don't give out those kind of numbers, just because I don't want someone listening to think, oh man, like John thinks, because I don't think like that. That's not how I think. I was just being pretty transparent, but I didn't realize somebody was going to sort of get their feelings hurt. So now,
you thought you were doing the right thing.
Yeah. And then someone told me I wasn't. And then I stopped. And then the other half said, like, hey, why aren't you giving out numbers? And then I have to explain. And I actually, at one point I came on during the recording and I said, listen, when I do, I'm not going to do these shows that much, but when I do like a card show as a dealer, just so you know, I'm not going to give out, how much I made, just because I don't want anyone to feel lesser than, because you're not lesser. I'm not more than you, and you're not lesser than me. And that was not my intention. And if you're listening, and even if you didn't send me an email, but you felt like that, I sincerely apologize, because that wasn't my intention with that. 0% intention. And I got a lot of message after that recording saying, we appreciate you saying that. I didn't take it that way when you did, but it's nice that you think of how we feel.
Sure.
It could potentially. So, sometimes you learn on the fly, as they say.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, there's one show that I recorded and I never aired it because as I was going through editing, I realized this is not what I do and this is not what I want to be known for. And so that episode lives only on my hard drive now because I thought, there's certain ways that you want to be perceived, and there's certain ways that you certain content you don't want to wade into sometimes because you feel like it's not really what's you. And so I recorded a whole different off the cuff episode after that, and it was totally fine. The episode was an episode about shill bidding, and I had actually gone through like deep into the data and like pulled out 3 or 4 of the worst perpetrators of it, and was going to go through the numbers and back everything up. And as I was listening to it, I'm like, this is not what I want to be doing. And so sometimes you really do when it's like, when you're not working. You mentioned Joe Rogan before, he has producers and everything else. You and me and other people who do their own show, we're it, right? We are the on-air talent. We are the editors. We're the producers, and someone's got to be in the room to tell us when not to do something, but it can only be us. And if it's not going to be us, it's gonna be like that really good fan of yours who said, hey, listen, I wish you hadn't done that. And sometimes you've got to take your cue from the people as well, which you did, and you did that.
Yeah, and I thanked them. Like, first I apologized. Like, hey, that wasn't my intent. I'm sorry about that. It's 100%, sincere. It's not going to happen again. And I gave him, without mentioning his name, I gave him credit, right? I'm not taking the credit like, hey, I thought about this, and I think people might. I said, hey, I got a message that somebody's feelings got hurt, and therefore I'm not really going to do that again. It's just, I don't want someone. I don't have a problem doing content, and someone may not agree with an opinion, but I don't want someone genuinely getting their feelings hurt because they felt less than, which obviously wasn't my intention. But whether it was my intention or not, Dave, that's what happened. Right?
Yeah.
And I don't like that bothered me. It legitimately bothered me. Like, I don't even talk to my wife about. She doesn't know about cards. She knows obviously podcasting, but I talked to her about that particular interaction, and she goes, well, just say the show was good or bad or okay or great, and which was already what I had decided to do. But she's like, you didn't mean it, but it bothered this particular person, so you can still do the same show without throwing $ amount out there, right? I can say it's a great show, or it was my best show this year so far, like financially, without saying a number, right? But at the same time, I got messages like, what did you make? So you can't make the whole room happy, but even the ones that when I didn't give out a total, they still I still talked about the show and observations and things I saw moving or that sort of thing. So it was still, other than a dollar amount, that was the only difference. And so that to me, that's just a minor thing that I can adjust on the fly. And again, I'm human, right? Sometimes we need someone else to say, hey, you dropped the ball here, or not even you dropped the ball, but you sort of rubbed me the wrong way here. And I've had people get one of the best compliments I've gotten, Dave, is someone says, John, I don't always agree with your opinion or what you say, but one thing I love and appreciate about you is I know there's no shtick. That's you. That's your real opinion. It's not like you're saying something on the air and then posting something or acting a different sort of way, like the contradictors. Even on some things where I don't necessarily see it the same exact way, I still appreciate you, because I know that's from your heart. And listen, and the same guy said, I don't want all of us to be cookie cutter and think the same way. That usually has bad outcomes. right?
Right.
As history shows. So, that's like one of the best compliments I can get is someone that says, hey, even when I don't agree with necessarily your point or your take, I still like you. And that resonates with me. But if I can eliminate a little thing and not rub someone the wrong way, I'm all about it. And I always say that on the show, right? Let me know what you think. You like something, you don't like something. Where can I be better? That's how we get better, right? And sometimes we need someone else to point it out. Like we don't always catch everything ourselves. So I'm appreciative. As long as it's done in a tactful way, rather than someone sends an email with 2 words that like, hey, you suck or that sucked. Okay, that tell me why so I can maybe improve on it or eliminate something, right? Give me a little more detail than 2 words, right? I ask for it and I'm appreciative of it, right? But as long as it's tactful, right? At the end of the day.
Yep. You can't please all of the people all the time.
No, I knew that. I learned that when I got into coaching, whether it be youth sports or at the high school level, right? The 1 year, real quick story. 1 year we, youth Pop Warner, we went like 10-0. I was a coach. We went like to the state finals. All the kids got big trophy. End of the year meeting. 80% of the parents liked me, right? Their kids won a big trophy. It had memories they'll never forget. But you're always gonna have that couple parents, right? Little Jimmy maybe didn't play as much as in their mind they thought he should. So Coach Newman still sucked. So you can't. Again, I learned from coaching, no matter what, you can't win the whole room. But if you can win maybe the majority of the room, then maybe that's a good sign.
Yep. That's just do content for yourself, and then others will come along as long as you're genuine, right?
Yeah. Well, Dave, listen, man. My door's always open. You want to come on any reason? You want to announce the relaunch of the Shallow? But listen, I appreciate you for the person you are and the content that you made and still making, even with your other shows. And you don't need me to tell you, but keep it up. And appreciate you, and I appreciate you making some time here. As always, I give like the guests sort of give out any social media handles or wherever you want people to find you and what you're doing.
Sure. So yeah, John, and thank you. I would not have made it 200 episodes if you and Jeremy Lee had not been so supportive early on, and you didn't know me from anyone, but you still gave me the time, and that really propelled me to be able to keep going. So thank you for all that you do and continue to do and have done, and you're a real asset to the hobby for sure. People can find me on Instagram at Iowa Dave Sports Cards. That's Iowa_Dave_Sports Cards. The Shallow End podcast feed is still live, but now it's producing the sports card casts from time to time. So that's where you can find that. And then Overthinking Baseball Cards appears there also. No, it doesn't. Yes, it does. It appears there for the podcast, but the video has its own channel. Overthinking Baseball Cards. We say we're once a month, but we're starting to go a little bit more. Jason and I are, and if you really like to talk baseball cards and think about baseball cards and about your own collections and how you collect, this might be the show for you. So I hope you all check it out.
No doubt. Thank you for the kind words, Dave. I'm not going to take any credit. I appreciate that. I think your success is more tested to yourself and who you are. But I don't want to be unappreciated. I do appreciate that. And like I said, coming from you, all the more so. But I think you hats off to you. You deserve the credit. But I appreciate you. Give me a little tip of the hat. But at the end of the day, right, it's you on the mic making content that people enjoy and love. And maybe I was on one episode, so I'll take credit. I'll take credit for that episode, but all the other 199, that's I'm kidding. But no, by all means, that's you. And but I appreciate the kind words nonetheless. And love to have you back on somewhere here down the line. And keep collecting, keep doing the content, whatever form it may be. It's still you, right? Sharing your passion and your hobby with those who love that.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Dave Schwartz, for giving some time to the program. Always love having Dave on, and we'll have him on again. If he wants to come back. Great guy, a lot of insight. Sort of to me represents what collecting should be about, really. And next 2 weeks, programming note, we will have authentication and autograph expert Steve Grad on the podcast for the next 2 weeks. First time ever. I don't know how that happened, but I'll fall on the sword for that one. But as I always say, right, better late than never. So Steve Grad next week and the following week. So we're going to have some closing thoughts here and wrap up this week's episode.
Time for our Hobby is the People Announcer of the Week.
Hey there, this is John Keating from That 70s Card Show with a friendly reminder that the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People Announcer of the Week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.